Mike,
We're
here,
live.
man, I feel like it's been forever.
It has. It's been 2 weeks because you're out traveling the world, bro.
Yeah, it's my parents' 50th anniversary. It's a thing you got to stop and do. Like,
Right.
weddings, funerals, 50th anniversary. You got to pause and, do those things.
Yes, sir. I very much agree. It's things you got to take care of. You got to stop down and appreciate. Otherwise, what are we doing all this stuff for, right?
Yeah, exactly. Why are we here? What does make the world go round? That is a question for another day of what you think makes the world go round. But today, however, we got some pretty good stuff coming at us. I was trying to see if I could um, remember what we titled it: Inflation versus Rates. Who will win? That's
Right.
called a teaser. That's called a
Yeah.
teaser. And
Yes.
and Mike and I know who's going to win, but we're going to get to that in just a second. But
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
but first,
Well, hang on. Before you say we know who's going to win, I mean, we don't know anything. Like, an asteroid could fall out of the sky. However, we have a pretty good idea based on history who's going to win. There you go.
yeah, I mean, but you remember, we're two ignorant gentlemen, dads, talking about stuff that we kind of know about, right? Because we might earn a living doing it. We're professionals. So yeah, I think I'm right. Of course,
Strong,
you do too,
strong
right?
term. Yeah, professional is a strong term, but we'll go with that.
Pros, we're pros. I'm a professional.
Yes.
First, we got a big weekend coming up. It's probably the most special day of the year if you're a dad. It's summertime. The U.S. Open's on. There's boating, fishing, golfing, everything that dads love to do. I mean, if you're a gamer, sure, it's gaming weekend. Whatever the case may be, this is your weekend. No
Yes.
honey-do list on the table for this weekend.
Yeah. What's the question you get? I want to know what your answer is when Mandy comes to you and says, "Donnie, it's Father's Day. What would you like to do?" What's your response to that question?
Well, okay, so it's pretty much common knowledge because U.S. Open a lot of times falls on Father's Day. That
Right.
Sunday afternoon. I mean, we go to lunch, go to church in the morning, maybe go to lunch, whatever. But I'm gonna watch golf, and then I'll probably grill out. Like, hey, I'll get some steaks, I'll grill it. Mandy takes care of everything else. I get out there and grill, pop a cold one. I mean, that's my standard Father's Day.
Yeah. My response to that is nothing. Like that's basically what.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? Nothing. I would like to do nothing. Speaking of Father's Day, though, there was actually a question I wanted to ask you. We talked about it briefly, but I'm curious because this is a related topic. So you are what I would call maybe like an empty nester at this point. Would you say that
Yeah.
that's an accurate statement?
I mean, I'm not quite there. They're not officially off the teat, so to speak.
Yeah, they're not living at your house.
Yeah,
Right?
for the majority of the year they don't.
Okay. So my question to you, because this is a relatively new thing for you. This isn't like, you've been this way
Yeah.
for a while. This is like within the
Yeah.
past, 6 months, something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the being a father, now that your children are basically moved out of the house, and again, they never go away completely, but I want to know, like, what do you guys do? What are you and Mandy doing that is like new stuff, or it's just like, okay, you get home and usually you got, well, we're going to this dance competition and we're attending this awards banquet. Now all that stuff's gone. So what are you doing? Like, what are you doing with your time?
You would like to think that you slow down, right? And I guess to some
I
extent,
don't think so.
if you want to, you can.
Right.
I think the goal for all of you young listeners out there, both of you, I want you to do this. I want you to work out, eat right, don't drink, don't smoke, none of that stuff, so you can be healthy and vibrant when your kids move out, and then you can drink and smoke all you want to. Because one of the things that I have found is that I love that Mandy and I are spring chickens, right? And we can go for a long weekend somewhere, or we can go out to eat, to whatever, that kind of thing. We are not, we talked about doing like a dance classes, and she's actually entertained that, which I'm all about it. We've talked about doing some of those gardening, like become master gardeners or, something like that. But we do have our hobbies that we do. Mandy loves, kind of decorating the house and getting everything kind of refreshed and whatnot. And we do that in flowers and, things like that. But basically, my career has kind of taken over as far. God, I just ate something earlier. Sorry.
Stay away from the light, Donnie. Stay away from the light. Don't go towards the light.
And I have kind of dove more into, work and making sure, because we're busy, Mike. I mean, we'll talk about that in a second. I mean, if I had a dime for every pre-qualification letter I sent out, I wouldn't have to work at all. But I mean, diving into that. But for the most part, it's the same but different, if that makes sense. You're just busy doing other things. And you find yourself gravitating to other, empty nesters. When you're right, you gravitate to kids' parents on the ball team that you're around 84 hours a week.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. But that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I was wondering, just because, obviously we're on opposite ends of the spectrum on that one, as far as our lifestyles are concerned, just because, I've got a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old, and, we're just getting into the, social lives of them, and, moving into junior high and high school and all the stuff that comes along with that. And it's a short window, it's only, we only get 4 or 5 years, with each one of them in that time frame. And we're crazy busy, and we always got stuff going on, and, it never slows down. But, I always joke with my wife. It's like, okay, well, once they're gone, and I don't mean gone, I'm just, off to college
not
and doing
anymore.
whatever. Yeah. What are we going to do? So what's the next phase after that? And what do you occupy your time with? Because I think you and I are similar in this regard. Like, I can't just sit around. Like, that's not a thing. I mean, I love working. Working's great, and this is what pays the bills. But it's also not my whole life. And you don't want to just you got to have passions outside of stuff. I think it's important, to grow yourself, like you said, eat healthy, take care of your body, do all that kind of stuff. I mean, you got to take care of your mind and your body and your health in order to continue to work and continue to do, what you need to do to pay the bills. But at some point, when the kids go away, you got to, it's that get busy living or get busy dying stuff. You got to figure out what the next phase for yourself is, right?
No doubt. I love Shawshank. Shout out to Shawshank Redemption. Maybe they'll sponsor us, Paramount Pictures or whoever made it. But yeah, I mean, it is a lot of the same in that we're going, but it's different for sure. It was a lot of tears in the beginning when we didn't have the dance competition to go to, but I digress. Let's get to the meat.
Okay.
Rates versus inflation. Which one is going to win? So let's break this down to the novel listener that doesn't do this every day, all the way to the person, every now and then I'll get a client. They're like, hey, I was watching a 10-year bond and it looks like rates are going to get better tomorrow, that kind of thing. So anywhere between there and there. And heck, if you're a seasoned professional mortgage planner, you may get something out of this too. So let's get down to the root of what we're talking about and kind of explaining everything, and then kind of go to what we think is going to happen. So Mike, tell us a little bit, and you can kind of speak on whichever topic you want, and I'll take the other one, rates versus inflation and what's happening in the Fed and all that stuff. So you pick a topic and I'll pick the other one.
Well, let's start with, I'll ask you a couple questions and then we can answer this. So when we talk about rates,
you put me on the spot. This is awesome. This is good.
No, you know this. When we talk about rates, right? Everybody says, okay, well, the Fed's going to do this and the Fed's going to do that, right? Mm-hmm. The Fed raised rates. The Fed lowered rates. Okay. Does that really matter to mortgage rates?
I mean, I think you could argue both ways, but this right here has nothing to do with the Federal Reserve, and this has to do with your mortgage rate. So, yes, no, because they do kind of influence each other.
Right, but directly, does the Fed, when the Fed says they raise, no, it doesn't. So, but what does? What is it that the Fed is doing that does impact rates? What are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, they certainly want to make sure that we're financially going in the right direction, and a lot of that has to do with the big I word, the inflation word.
Right. But what they're doing is they're buying mortgage-backed securities. That's what they're
That's
doing.
the tool. Right? Yeah, absolutely.
Right. That's their tool to influence mortgage rates. So the Fed does do that. So they don't, when they raise the, you know, the standard rate, or what we call it, the borrowing rate, that doesn't affect mortgage rates. But when they buy mortgage-backed securities and create the demand for that, that drives rates down. Right.
Right.
So now we know where rates when it comes to the Fed and what they do. So I'll talk about inflation. Okay.
Okay.
Inflation is something that you and I have been talking about for a while. You know, it's not something that's new. This isn't it. We've talked about this multiple times.
Real quick, we have been talking about it forever, but it seems like it has caught the Fed off guard. Oh my gosh, these guys are in charge. All right, keep going. Sorry.
Well, and that's part of what I was going to say is that when you look at where things are right now. So here's a couple of numbers, right? So they have something called a headline inflation rate, okay, or inflation expectation. When they call it headline inflation, what they're saying is they're taking inflation and they're annualizing it. They're spreading it out over 12 months, okay? So the Fed meets once every 3 months. They have a quarterly meeting. So in March, when they met last month, they had a expectation that the headline inflation rate was going to be 2.25% or 2.5 almost. It's like 2.5.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what they were thinking. All right. Well, just 3 months later, and oh, by the way, they were saying it's transitory, you know, meaning that it's just because of demand and it'll slowly taper off and go away. You know, now realize every time that Mr. Powell stands up and has something to say about what's happening in the economy, markets move. Okay, so they have to be very careful about what they say and how they say it. Right? It's a big part of how markets adjust. So because markets are emotional. So when you look at that, you go, okay, they're saying it's transitory and it's, you know, 2.5, and we expect it to taper off, right? Well, so everybody's like, oh, okay, it's going to be all right. Well, then fast forward to June, 3 months later. Okay, 3 months later, the actual inflation rate in February was 1.7%. Okay, that was the actual inflation rate. By June this month, it's now at 5%. Okay,
for 1 month.
For 1 month, 5%. So it's gone up from 1.6 to 5% in just 5 months. That's a massive adjustment in inflation. Okay, now the Fed comes out and says, okay, our new headline inflation, you know, anticipation is now 3.5%. So it was 2.5. 3 months later, it's 3.5. But everything's okay, guys. It's all fine. It's transitory. Don't worry about it. It's all going to be okay. All right. Look, it is all going to be okay because this stuff happens up and down markets all the time. It's happened all through history. Okay, so it's not the end of the world. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a serious inflation issue. Okay, inflation is going to continue to be an issue for the next several years because of all the money that's been pumped into the economy, the stimulus checks, the infrastructure bill that they're trying to do, low rates making money cheap to borrow. Okay, all of those things impact this inflation number, which means that your debts, which we'll get into in a minute, now that you hold currently get devalued, which is actually good. Mortgage debts, especially because you have a fixed rate, and your dollar, but compared to like consumer goods, it doesn't spend as far. So instead of a gallon of milk costing $1.50, now it costs $2, right? Or gas, or everybody's seen, lumber, all these things that are being impacted by inflation. So when that happens, Donnie, now that we're talking back to rates, okay, what is the one tool that the Fed has that they have to make inflation slow down?
Yeah. So the Fed gets involved because, they print money whenever they need it, basically. And they just say, look, again, we go back to economics, my good old degree at the University of Tennessee, supply and demand, right? So rates are higher than they need to be, right, in their mind. So they need to lower rates. So what they do is they go in and buy. What keeps rates lower is the demand. In other words, more buyers in the market. And there's buyers every day in mortgage-backed securities. There's always going to be, right? The loans that Mike sells, the loans that Donnie sells, the loans that everybody sells, those buyers are in there. But then you pile on trillions of dollars worth of purchases for them to come. And by the way, don't think of it as frivolous spending because they're buying an asset, right? So don't get mad about that. You got some stuff to be mad about today, but that's not it, because they're buying an asset and they'll eventually sell it and that kind of thing. But they're going to quit buying, they were, especially during the pandemic, especially during the rebuilding of the recession craziness, the Great Recession, they started buying mortgage-backed security bonds in numbers that you don't know where to put all the commas and zeros. Okay, so when that happens, that forces the price, the interest rate that you're looking at, down. Okay, so when that happens, you're sitting there saying, hey, we got a 2.25% interest rate. This is great. This administration is taking good care of me, right? Well, understand that while the politics and the Federal Reserve, there you can draw some correlations, right? But really, what they're trying to do is to keep us moving in this. I'm sorry, let me move over here. In this trajectory, not this trajectory, and certainly not this trajectory, right? To where we're growing at a sustainable pace. But when you got your normal buyers in the market, right? All the loans that me and Mike sell, which is a whole lot, plus everybody else's. Then you got the Federal Reserve buying trillions of dollars on a monthly basis, literally, and you take that $1 trillion out, the only thing that can happen is rates go up. Now, I'm not talking about the Federal Reserve rate. We're talking about these rates right here. So just to point this out while I've got this up. So this little dot, are you seeing my pointer at all, Mike?
Yes, sir. Your pointer, no, I'm not seeing
Okay.
it.
So on the far right, I don't know how to make my pointer on this. On the far right of this graph, you'll see a long red line going down, big bold. By the way, don't think about that as that's going down, because that's bad. That means prices going down, rates are going up, okay? That day with a little yellow triangle above it, it's third from the right. That day was when the Federal started saying, oh my God, we have inflation problems, which I'm going to touch on that in a second, why I think that's ridiculous that they're just now seeing it. Okay. Right. It rebounded the next day, and look what happened this morning. So that long skinny line on the far right is showing that it was down low and then it rebounded. So what happened? Let me get this off here.
Donnie, that's called a candlestick, by the way.
Oh, it is a hold on. It's that's a Japanese candlestick, but that's called a hammer. I think it's called a hammer theory, something like that. But the St. Louis Fed President James Bullard this morning talked about we might stop buying as many mortgage-backed securities. Exactly what Mike pointed out just a second ago, and that is bad news for rates and bad news for you as a consumer if rate is the most important thing to you. And that's why we're going to talk about inflation versus rates, which one's going to win. So I want to kind of get us started in the second half of this conversation. So now you know about inflation, why it happens, rates, and how that happens, and the Federal Reserve is buying mortgage-backed security bonds like crazy. But if you'll remember, when rates really went down, we were in a pandemic, right? It just starting. And when that was starting, the government said, okay, we got to take care of everybody. Let's just throw all our money at I'm very animated, aren't I? Sorry. Let's throw all our money at mortgage-backed security bonds so that we can keep rates low, and whoever does have a job can buy a house, right? That's basically what they said. And they did. And the pandemic's over. I don't know if you noticed. Not if you go to Jamaica. Just FYI, it's not. But for all intents and purposes, the pandemic is if you look at the bell curve, we're way down here, right? And rates are going up. Now, what does that mean to you? Obviously, you know that houses are going through the roof, okay? And by the way, inflation and appreciation are both indicators of going up, right? The value going up, the value of the house going up, all of that is the same. It's not exactly the same. However, they are correlated. So think about this, and this is where Mike and I want to take the rest of this conversation is, okay, rates or inflation, which one's going to win? So you've got your rates going up. They are going up. Mike and I can attest that they are. It's kind of like the knob was turned down on refinances, although we're doing a lot of refinances because rates, oh my goodness, are still great. You know, they're not bad at all.
They're still low threes. Like,
I mean, ridiculous here. Ridiculously low. Like, no, I don't want. I want to do it unless it's a 2. You know, okay, whatever. Sorry, I just probably made one of my customers mad. But that's a great rate. But they are going up. But it turned up the purchase market. Okay, so what is the real culprit in this rise in housing market? And Mike, in my mind, I think the biggest culprit in all this is supply of homes. Okay. Yes. So one of the things the Federal Reserve is talking about when they talk about inflation, they talk about it being transient. Okay. And what that means, transitory. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. But all that basically means is it's going to come back around, right? It's not like it's always going to go in this direction or always going to stay the same or whatnot. So they're calling for a 3.5% inflation, but by next year it should be 2.5. But the thing that really irks me is that they make, you know, Mike talked about it real quick about the knee-jerk reaction. They just get up and say a bunch of words and the market goes crazy, right? We understand averages. We did it in 4th grade, right? If you're averaging 12 months, okay, and you take off and you're moving to the next month, right? So you take off 1.2 in this time last year and add a 3.5 this time this year, what's going to happen to your average? It's going up. If the next month you take a 0.6 inflation rate from last year and replace it with a 5.2, Mike, what's going to happen to averages? And I'll let you take it from here. I've talked too much.
They're going to go
up, man. It's not hard. How could they not see these numbers coming?
Well, I want to be, you know, this is conspiracy Mike again, so I'll be clear on that. But I don't think they don't see these numbers coming. Okay, Mr. Powell did not reach the position that he got because he's an idiot. All right,
yeah, I agree with that.
All of those people are in positions that they're in. Now, granted, you could say they know this person, they know that person, whatever. But they're not morons. Okay, these are smart people. They're dialed into what's happening. But they have to be very careful in what they say because their words impact the market. So if you are, you know, if you're standing in a building, right, and the back room is on fire, right, and you know that if it keeps burning, it's going to spread through the rest of the house. But everybody in the house, you got to keep calm, right? You're like, hey, guys, look, the fire's back there. We got it under control. Don't worry about it. Everything's going to be fine, okay? Do you know that maybe you don't have it that much under control? Do you know that if it spreads, it's going to burn the whole dang house down? Yes. Are you going to tell the masses that so everybody freaks out and stampedes each other through the doorway like at was that a Motley Crue or Whitesnake concert? Remember that? That's a long time ago. Let's call back. But are you gonna do that to panic people, or are you just gonna say, okay, everything's going to be okay? Daddy says it's all going to be all right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. They're not stupid. They didn't miss this stuff. They don't not know what's happening. They're just giving us just enough information to be like, oh, yeah, it is a little higher. Oh, yeah, it's probably a little worse than we thought. We've adjusted our projections. We'll probably stop buying mortgage-backed securities in a couple of years, you know, but don't worry about it. It's all going to be fine, right?
It's going to be fine.
Well, you know what? In the long term, it will be fine. However, in the short term, it's going to impact things, okay? So ultimately what this boils down to is, as a buyer, because whether you're an agent or a lender or you're in the market to buy, right, in our markets, it still is a situation where buying a home right now is a good thing to do, okay? Now, I know prices are higher than you want them to be, but you have to understand that when you look at that U.S. housing market, I think that's a misconception. I don't think there's a U.S. housing market. I think there are 200 to 300 individual markets in every state that are impacted by different things, okay? So if you live in Chicago or you live in California or you live in New York, okay, your housing market is probably trending in this direction, okay, because people are leaving those states for a lot of different reasons. However, if you're in Tennessee, right, that way? Yeah. If you're in Tennessee or you're in Texas, it's a completely different story because all of those people are moving to our place, right? So the market is different. Well, Donnie, what's a great asset to have if inflation is going up and appreciation is going up and interest rates are going up? What's a fantastic asset to own and have a debt that you've already established on?
Property.
A property, a house, right?
Especially, there's no better investment than the house that you're going to lay your head down in each night.
Sure.
Don Eden, 1993.
Right.
My dad.
But on the other side of that as well, okay, we talked about a house. Here's another fun little number that just came out recently. Guess what the rent appreciation has been since the start of January of 2021? 5%. Okay, rents in this year alone have gone up 5%. Okay, so if you also happen to be an owner of investment properties, VRBOs, whatever, an income generating property, this is a huge benefit for you as well, because two things. Number one is your rents are going to go up, which means your revenue goes up. So you're protected against inflation because your asset is reflection of inflation. So therefore, when inflation goes up, so do your rents, right? But the debt that you took out to acquire that asset does not change, okay? So if you borrowed $200,000 5 years ago, it's still the $200,000 at the rate that you fixed, even though your dollar is now worth more to pay that debt off, okay? So real estate in this environment is nothing but a good decision. Now, granted, are you going to overpay sometimes? Are you paying a little bit more than maybe you should? You know what? I think that's where we are to some degree, and it's not ideal, but it is what it is. Because the opposite of that is you keep renting, and guess what happens to your rent? It keeps going up. So, if you got to overpay a little bit and borrow the rate while it's still low, because rates are still low, but with inflation continuing on and the Fed tapering what they're going to buy, they're not going to stay there. So there is no better time. And we keep saying that over and over again, but it's just the truth.
So I agree with that 100%. And here's a great example. So there was one time in my did I just pass 21 or just pass 22 years? That long of a time.
You're so old, I lose track.
Look at this. I mean, it's terrible. I don't even fix my hair anymore. I mean, yeah. I'll show you my wrinkles. Look at that. One time in my career, I saw a major shift down in housing values. Okay, and that was in the 08 to 010 or 2010 range.
Yep.
Good news is, within 2 years, it had bounced back and started surpassing, right? Just look at the stock market. I remember being so excited when we hit 20,000. I mean, no, 20,000. What's the number? 20,000?
Are you talking about the Dow?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, it was like 25.
Yeah, it got to 25 all-time high, and then it just went half, all of a sudden. And then now it's nothing to be over 30, whatever. So one time I have heard people ask say the saying like, man, I really wish I just bought at the top, man, and then the bottom fell out and that was terrible, and I just kicked myself, right? That never happens. First of all, that happened because the market was making bad loans. Literally checking your pulse, get a copy of your driver's license.
Yep.
You get a loan, and you get a loan, and you get okay.
So that's the Big Short again.
Watch the Big Short. It was a broken market, and we fixed that. If you've got a loan with me, you're shaking your head right now. You went through the ringer to make sure you got your loan. You proved everything. Right. Okay,
yes,
and we've overcame that. We've made it easy as possible on you. But there are a lot more people that have said, "Damn, I wish I'd have bought that 5 years ago." Golly, look at it now. So that happens on a regular basis. Real estate is a great investment. Now, it may not always be a great short-term investment, although there are a lot of people that think you could still make money short-term in this market, okay? But it is a great long-term investment. Great example. And this is a long term. In the 70s, they opened a neighborhood that I moved into about 25 years ago. In the 70s, they built a neighborhood. I know an old guy that was my neighbor that built and bought the land and built his house for $27,000. It's not a huge house. No. It's a, 1,500 square feet, 1,400 square feet, box ranch, kind of deal. It was a long time. Don't get me wrong. He kept it up. Don't get me wrong. He sold that thing for basically 10 times what he bought it, however many years later. Now, there may have been some times in that he bought at 27 and it started going up and then it went down, right? And then it went up and then hey, it may go down a little bit. So understand this, that there are always cases when you have to sell your house right now. I'm moving, I'm getting transferred, I'm getting deported. Not deported. What's it called when you go on to Afghanistan? Is that deported? What is that? That's not
when
deported.
When you go to Afghanistan,
what's that called?
Are you talking about when you're asked to leave the country? That's called
orders or whatever. Yeah, whatever. I get it. There's times when you have to leave, but for the most part, that's horrible. God, strike that from the minutes. But for the most part, you don't have to leave your house right now, okay? And this little stint right here, let's just say we have a little downturn. It may be 2 or 3 years from now, and it may be for 12 months. But overall, the investment that you're making in these houses is not going to get any cheaper. So let's sum up our original question. Rates versus inflation, which one's going to win? Mike, give me your take.
I mean, unfortunately, they both win because inflation is going to go up and rates are going to go up. And so those two things are going to work together because the only way they can stop inflation from happening is to raise rates. And they raise rates by not buying mortgage-backed securities, so they both go up. So when that happens, the buyer loses. So the sooner you can get into the market and buy the house at the lower rates before the inflation gets worse and worse and worse, the better.
Okay, so I look at it a little bit different. Inflation, appreciation, we can say that they're somewhat correlated, but I think we're saying the same thing. The buyer who buys right now and holds on to a house for 5 years, regardless of the interest rate, because by the way, we're locking in your loan for however long you want to lock it in for. The appreciation / inflation, it doesn't really matter where it goes. Certainly, the dollar may be worth more or less. Don't get caught up on that for right now. Understand that your cost, Mike touched on it earlier, your cost is never going to change except for your taxes and insurance, and that's a whole nother deal. But your cost of that money is not going to change, but the value is going to go up. So if you're on the fence right now and you're thinking, you know what, I just can't buy this because God, it's hot right now, and it's we're not talking about the Texas heat and the Tennessee humidity. We're talking about the market. Man, it's hot right now, and dadgum, I'm probably buying at the top. It's just too much. I'm gonna wait for it to go down, then I'm gonna get one.
You'll be waiting a while. You're gonna be waiting.
You're never gonna get it.
And oh, by the way, even if it does go down, even if prices plateau and they kind of get back to a reasonable level, you know what is going to have changed in order for that to happen? Higher rates. So you still lose in that situation, or at least, again, you lose compared to now. So if the decision is wait, it's not going to be in the best interest of what you're doing.
Yeah.
But if you can do it now, do it now. If you can't, you got to work to that point because ultimately, you know, and I don't really like the saying of, your house is your best asset. I mean, there's a lot of arguments on that. But what I will tell you is that if you want to get out of the situation of renting for the rest of your life and living paycheck to paycheck and never having any equity into something that's worth something, then don't buy a house, okay? But if you want to get going and down that path and you haven't started, the house is the place to start because at least you're putting money towards something that you own that's going to be worth more over time. It doesn't help cash flow. It doesn't help all that stuff. Those are investment properties, that kind of thing. But to start, right, the first step, get the house, talk to Donnie, talk to me. We can help you understand what you need to do, where you need to go, how much money you need, what kind of payments you can expect, all that kind of stuff. So you have eyes wide open going into the situation and put you in the best spot so you can start down that road. And if you're already down that road and you love it and you want to get more, then investment properties you can't go wrong with those right now. So, because again, the money that you're borrowing, I liked how you said the cost of the money that you borrowed actually goes down with inflation, the cost of it, because your $1 because of inflation is now $2. But the $1 that you borrowed to buy your house is still $1. And then one day your $2 is going to be $3. Then it's going to be $4. And that other dollar is still $1. So that makes that debt, that cost of that debt go down. so you can pay it off faster and get free of that debt, the sooner the better.
So I think, Mike, you say that you don't love the saying that your house is your best investment, the house that you live in every single day. So what he's basically saying, and so I think he does agree with it, he just doesn't like to say it. But what he really does like to say is that if your best investment is like alien research, Bitcoin, and blockchain. If you can invest your money in that, it is better investment than the house you live in every single day.
That may not be the worst thing you've ever said in your life, actually. I would take the alien research out of that because there's not really a way to make money there. But there is certainly a way to make money in blockchain and cryptocurrency. So, yes.
Hey, wait. We could find out a way to obtain aliens and have people meet them. That would be the theme park. We would put Disney out of business if they were nice. If they were nice aliens.
The only thing I was saying about your house being your best investment is that, or your greatest asset, or whatever you want to call it, is it's not really that until you sell it, right? So while you're living there, right, you have to pay utilities. I mean, there's cost involved. You're living, but you're going to be living the cost anyway. So what I'm saying is that if you have nothing, right, if you don't have anything of value, then yes, your house is the best thing you can get into to start. But once you're down that road, there are many other things that are greater investments than the house that you live in. That's what I'm saying. Because you can't realize. Well, let me ask you this, Donnie.
Okay.
Let me put it this way. When somebody buys a house, right, and they talk to you, do you tell them to put as much money as possible into their house as a down payment, or do you tell them to either do the minimum or 20%? There are advantages for 20%, but what do you tell? What do you tell?
I mean, that depends on the situation, and everybody gets a different answer, Mike, because I'm a true financial advisor. There's not a cookie cutter answer for those kind of things.
Okay, fair enough. However, I would argue that once you put money into your house, right, you're borrowing this money at 3% interest over 30 years, which is nothing. Okay. Once you put that $10,000 into the house, which only saves you $50 a month, by the way, once you put that 10 grand in, how do you ever get that money back?
Yeah, I agree with that.
You can't get it back until you sell it or you refinance it. Those are the only two ways. And both of those things cost you money to do. So in order to get your money back out, it's going to cost you money. Right. So point being is that if you want to make money, you need money. You need money to buy properties. You need money to invest in the stock market. You need money to put in places. Once you put it in your house, you can't get that money. And you can't get that equity until you sell or refinance that house, which costs money. However, investment properties, you can get revenue and money coming at you on a regular basis because someone's paying you rent. So that's what I'm saying is when you talk about a house being an investment, it certainly is. But I'm just saying, once you've established you own a home, it no longer becomes your best investment. But if you haven't gotten there, then that's the first step. That's what I'm saying.
Hey, landlords, comment to tell me what kind of nightmares you've dealt with as a landlord. So we'll just leave it at that. Those of you that are listening, you can go by gray hair or no hair. You choose. The house that you live in is the best investment you can make.
Okay. All right. Well, if you don't have any other houses, then yes, I would agree with that. If you have nothing else, then it is the best investment you can get to start. It's your best starter investment. How about that?
We just lost 3 viewers right there.
I think it was because everybody got to see your nose hairs.
Oh my God. No, I trimmed one just the other night. We're good. Clean.
Hey, before we go, okay, because I think we've put that up in a nice little bow there. But on our last little thing, we've been here for 38 minutes. I want to ask you a question. So we talk about investments and we talk about living the best life and all these things, right? Enjoying yourself, with your whatever. What would you tell somebody listening, a younger person that is, because you're old and wise now, right? What is a habit? And I want to be very specific about the word habit. What is a habit that you have acquired or that you have developed over the years that maybe you didn't start with, right? It wasn't something that you always did, but it's something that you've kind of grown into that you think has had not the biggest, because it's hard to measure that, but let's just say one of the biggest impacts on your success as a human being in however you classify success. What, it doesn't have to be money. It could be family. It could be all kinds of stuff. But what is a habit that you've tried to, regularly cultivate and get better at and do that you really feel like has made an impact on your life overall?
So I would say getting cancer changed my life for the most of anything, right? So don't do that, right? That's a whole. It's
not really a habit. That's an event.
That definitely, that event changed my life for the biggest part.
Well, but it could be something that you learned for that event.
Yeah.
Therefore, you started doing things different.
I think so don't go get cancer, okay? And I don't even know if you can try to get cancer. Probably, and this is going to sound bad because you got to find balance. But when I get up in the morning and I don't go to work, I'm a little lost if it's not a work day, right? And that's why I struggle for many years on vacations, and I had to learn to kind of, push the button and turn off kind of deal. But I've had probably 3 people tell me early on in my career that work cures a lot of ills, right? And you gotta have money, and you gotta do this because I say this to all the team here at my office. I say, listen, guys, I understand that you don't work here because you're like, man, I just love working. It's the best, right? We work so that we can make the funds to enjoy the life that we want to enjoy, right? And certainly you can go too extreme on that and become a workaholic, which is a real problem, right? But just getting your butt out of bed and doing the things you need to do in your career during that time frame probably was a habit that I watched my dad do it for sure. He was probably, I think he would argue and would say that he was more of a workaholic than me. Because Mike, you've been around me for a few years. I do love my job, right? I love to work and I love to get out of bed and do my thing and whatever. But when I'm off work, I play hard. I love hard. I cry hard. I feel like that just the basics of getting up and going, because my mom, here's a great example. So this is the right before all the craziness, or right around the time all the craziness happened in 08, 9, and 10. And I was about to give up because it was bad in this business. I was literally about to give up. And my mom, she just said, Donnie, there's just something. And I don't know what it was, but there was just something that tells me you need to stay the course. I don't know what it is. So that's that deal where it's got a frog in a pelican's mouth and the frog's reaching out and he's got his hands around the pelican's throat, and it says, don't ever give up. Somewhere between, and that's kind of the same thing, right? Because if you're in your career and it's going bad and it's not the way you want it to go, but there's just something out there that's saying, keep going, do not give up, because there are the term fruits of your labor didn't just come out of mystic alien land, right? It's a real thing. You will see fruits of your labor if you persist. And there's a great book. I'll end with this. There's a great book that Andy Andrews wrote called The Traveler's Gift. And I'm not going to give away the whole book, but it's fiction, but it's a really good book that he put together. And one of the things that he talks about in there is there's a place somewhere in the land, right, that it's just full of boxes and shelves and whatnot. And it's all the things that people gave up on, whether it's a kid, whether it's a cure for cancer, whether it's a bicycle that they wanted, but they just gave up because they couldn't cut yards anymore because it was too hard and they couldn't buy the bicycle. There's millions of those things out there in this little land, this warehouse or whatever, of things that people didn't persist. Now, look, sometimes things happen and you have to give up. I get it 100%. But more than anything, that persistence literally will pay off. Sorry, you got me all worked up there, man. I feel like I'm preaching.
That's a good question, right?
Yeah, it kind of caught me off guard there. But get up and go, and don't give up.
Yes, I would agree. I think that we need it. It's whether people understand it or not. Like, what's the reason? You might be able to answer this. What the answer that I'm looking for, but we share a common desire to mow grass, right? We both love mowing our yard.
Grass.
Okay. But when you think about the core of what that is, okay, what is it about mowing that yard that makes you feel good when you're done?
Well, I mean, it's pride of accomplishment, but I mean, quite frankly, I have all girls in my house. All my dogs are girls. Sometimes it's just to get the heck outside, man.
I understand that. But you could gravitate towards a bunch of other things to get out. Why is it that you gravitate to the yard? You know, what is it about that simple task that makes it so appealing?
Just being outside, spitting on the ground, listen to your music, and then you get down and you're like, hey, man, check out this picture of my grass right here. Look at that. Look at that.
Exactly. You had a challenge, right? Which was, I mean, you know, challenge is a strong word, but
sure.
You had something you were trying to overcome, which was you got this yard. It needs to be mowed. It's a task that needs to be completed. There's a man. I need to take care of this, right? So you get out there and you mow that yard. And now the great thing is, you know, we're not out there pushing mowers. Let's be real clear, right? I'm sitting on the zero turn, but I'm riding around, I'm listening to my stuff, I'm having my drink, I'm enjoying my Zen time, doing my thing, and then I get to do this work. I'm out in the sun, maybe I got a little bit of a sweat because I'm picking stuff up, doing my thing. And then when it's all said and done, and that sunset's starting to come down because you've been out there all day, and so it's coming down, and you look across that yard, and you just see beauty, and you're just like, yeah, I did that, right? I did that, right? That is what that appeal is, and that's what working is. And when you say working, people think of their job, and they think, you know what, that's not it. If you go out and wash your car, or you come up with an idea on a new business you want to start, that's all work, okay?
Yeah.
We need work. Human beings need to have something to challenge us and push us and accomplish something, or else we just sit around like bumps on a log and never get anything done. And the people that, sit around, oh, poor me and poor that, I'm like, look, man, everything bad happens to people. Everybody has had something terrible happen in their life, okay? There's varying degrees of it. The response is, what are you going to do about it to make your life better? You got to get up and keep going, because the moment you stop working and stop pushing, you might as well just cash it all in. So I agree with you 100%. Keep going, keep working.
What is the late great, I believe Tom Petty said, if you never slow down, you'll never grow old. I mean, my goodness, what right up there with get busy living or get busy dying. I mean, I quite frankly don't ever want to slow down, and I will say that'll probably be the death of me, is when I can't go and do, because that's when I struggle the most. I'm gonna have to have a lot of laying in a chair activities around me. I'm going to be that guy that's always out for the first activity at the old folks home. Like, all right, I'm ready for bingo. Let's go. Get me out there. Get me out there. But yeah, I think that's a great question, and good one to end on here on a Friday, Father's Day, summer day. I mean, it's going to be great. What a great weekend.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, I appreciate it, Donnie. Good talking to you again, brother. We get to do it again soon. I'm going to be in Gulf Shores, Alabama next Friday. So I'll get to be you with your sunglasses on doing it. But cool. I'm there for a baseball tournament. We're going for a baseball tournament.
Yeah, we're definitely in different stratospheres as far as family time goes.
That's right.
Well, hey, make it a great weekend.
All right. Be great humans. We'll see you soon.